Discover the incredible transformation, how a receptionist's hidden bias exposed a millionaire's true colors. Sarah had always been the backbone of her family, the glue that held everything together in Maplewood. As a 28-year-old receptionist at the local medical clinic, she answered phones with a bright smile, her heart pouring into every "How can I help you?" She balanced her family, a single mother and 2 younger siblings, with grace that made her seem almost superhuman. But beneath her resilient exterior was the weight of obligation and expectation, ready to crush her. Then came Jack. He strode in one gray Tuesday morning, a stark contrast to the small-town charm of Maplewood. Clad in tailored clothing and an attitude that reeked of privilege, Jack seemed like a caricature from a world far removed from Sarah's. She felt the tension ignite instantly as he dismissed her friendly attempt at small talk, his eyes glued to a screen on his sleek smartphone. Her chest tightened. Why did he think he was better than everyone here? As the days went by, their paths crossed often. Jack came in for routine treatment, but his entitled demeanor rubbed Sarah the wrong way. He made snide comments, critiquing everything from the clinic's outdated decor to the quality of care. Sarah's tolerance waned with each interaction. But as a community health crisis loomed over Maplewood, their worlds collided in unimaginable ways. The clinic began to swell with worried faces as patients poured in, all desperate for care. Sarah felt her chest tighten, every influx a reminder of the burden she bore. And then a local veteran collapsed in the waiting room. Panic erupted. Sarah stepped into action. She rushed to the man's side, shouting for help, her heart pounding. Jack, however, hesitated. He glanced at his watch, debating whether it was worth his time. Rage flared within Sarah. He needs help, Jack. She threw at him, her voice strained with desperation. The dissonance between their outlooks burst forth. To her, this was life and death, to him, it was an inconvenience. In that heated moment, as she knelt beside the veteran, Sarah saw through the layers of Jack's dismissive facade. Maybe he wasn't just a wealthy businessman, perhaps he carried his own burdens and insecurities. Jack's gaze dropped, conflict swirling in his expression. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The storm of emotion spiraled between them. Jack realized his wealth meant nothing if he couldn't help someone in need. And Sarah's heart softened, wrestling to see the person behind the suit. The moment stretched painfully, neither wanting to back down. As the crisis escalated, Jack made a choice. He stepped forward to help secure resources, combating medical shortages with a tenacity Sarah hadn't expected. At the same time, she fought the urge to remain skeptical, slowly dismantling the wall of her biases. They became an unlikely team, mouths shut tight in determination as they worked tirelessly for their community. But as they pressed on, a single thought lingered: could they find a way to understand each other amid their stark differences? Would Jack prove he was more than just a millionaire from the city, or would Sarah's initial judgments keep them apart? The air felt heavy with unanswered questions, tension simmering, as they prepared for the next wave of challenges in their intertwined fates. The days flowed into a whirlwind of activity at the clinic. Sarah and Jack quickly became familiar faces amid the chaos, their heightened collaboration surprising both of them. They worked side by side, distributing supplies where they were most needed, helping lost patients navigate through fear and uncertainty. One afternoon, while they were restocking shelves, something flickered in Jack's eyes, a moment of vulnerability as he glanced over at Sarah. "Can I ask you something?" he said. The casual tone he usually had felt softer, almost hesitant. "Sure," she replied, wiping her brow. "Why do you do this?" I mean, why do you stick around, especially when you could be anywhere else? Jack's question hovered between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Sarah paused, her heart racing. Because this is my home. These people are my family. Her voice caught, revealing her depth. I have to ensure they're supported. It's not just work for me, Jack. It matters. He nodded thoughtfully, the weight of the conversation settling in. She could see he was trying to process everything, trying to connect the dots of her existence to his privileged reality. The tension of their past exchanges seemed to dissolve, slowly being replaced by something raw understanding. However, not every moment was smooth. Later that week, Jack arrived at the clinic with an announcement. I've set up something big with my connections. We're getting a mobile crisis unit to help with the overflow. His enthusiasm spilled out, but it came with a tint of arrogance. Sarah's stomach churned. You mean your friends are helping? What about the rest of us here? It feels like a PR stunt. His brows furrowed. It's not. This is serious, Sarah. People need care. I thought you'd be a little more supportive knowing we can actually make a difference. Right, because you holding the purse strings makes it all better. Anger flared, punctuating their silence. Jack's expression soured as realization dawned on them both. She didn't trust him entirely, nor did he fully understand the gravity of her concerns. That night, Sarah tossed in her sleep, replaying the day's moment over and over. The cracks in their teamwork began to show. Was he genuine, or just playing the part of a savior? She wanted to believe in his transformation, yet doubt clung to her like a stubborn shadow. Meanwhile, Jack grappled with his own insecurities. He had stepped into this world, thinking it would be an easy fix with his resources, but he found himself tangled in emotions he hadn't anticipated. The harsh reality of the community's struggles weighed on him, challenging everything he believed about wealth and worth. Those conflicting feelings spiraled into something deeper, punctured by a single haunting realization. He'd have to confront not just Sarah, but his own self-image. Was this, after all, what philanthropy meant? To be exposed, vulnerable, and willing to wrestle with the consequences of one's power? Weeks passed, building tension around what was yet to happen. A new crisis erupted when a sudden storm flooded Maplewood. Streets turned to rivers, and soon the clinic was at the center of an emergency. They could help, but it would take everything they had. Jack and Sarah stood on the brink of their darkest hour, poised together at the front line of chaos. As the storm raged outside, they prepared for the onslaught ahead. Would they rise as partners, overcoming the shadows cast by their past? Or would their unresolved issues drown in the flood? One thing was clear, the true test of their connection was about to begin, and no one could predict the outcome. The storm roared like a beast unleashed. Rain lashed against the clinic windows, rattling the glass and instilling a sense of urgency. Jack could feel it in the air, a mixture of fear and determination among the staff. They had no choice but to prepare and provide support to those who soon need it most. Sarah, grab those tarps. We can use them to block the water coming in through the south entrance. Jack shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. She nodded, sprinting away with a purpose. As she raced, Jack watched her, feeling a flicker of admiration. In the light of the emergency, their blaring differences faded, and all he could think about was keeping the clinic afloat. By the time the first patients arrived, the small waiting room was packed. Families, soaked and shivering, crammed into every corner, desperation etched on their faces. Sarah greeted each one, offering warmth and provisions, while Jack coordinated volunteers, directing them where they could be most effective. Are you working with the crisis unit? A woman asked, clutching her child close. Jack's heart sank. Not yet. They're on their way, I promise. He didn't know if his answer was true, but it felt like the only thing he could say to ease her fears. Hours slipped by like quicksand. Supplies dwindled as they handed out food, clothing, and basic medical care. Despite the overwhelming tide, Jack felt something shift within him. Each person he helped changed something inside. The mere act of serving others began filling the void that wealth had long ignored. Meanwhile, Sarah was juggling so many responsibilities that each minute away from the chaos felt like a risk. She caught glimpses of Jack stepping outside to check on logistics or to speak with the flood of volunteers. Every time he returned, exhaustion painted across his face, a new layer of understanding seemed to settle in. "Jack!" She called out to him amid the frantic atmosphere, holding a pair of wet shoes in her hands. "We're running low on supplies. We need to request more food and blankets." "On it." His response was immediate, yet there was a weight in his voice. Observing him, she saw how he absorbed every detail. As the ordeal continued, the initial friction of their partnership slipped away, replaced by a team forged in fire. Working side by side, sharing exhausted glances and unspoken support, they moved like dancers in a hectic routine. "I didn't think you'd be this good at this," Sarah teased gently as they briefly caught breath together, laughter mingling with the tension. Jack chuckled, his face brightening, "And I didn't think you'd ever cut me any slack." But even in these moments, shadows lurked. Sarah felt the burden of their unresolved issues. She wanted to believe in his intentions but hesitated. Could he really change? "Sarah, about what I said, I realize it may have come off wrong," he ventured, searching her eyes for understanding. "I mean, it's not just my connections that matter. I want to do this right." She glanced away, fearing that if they ventured deep into that conversation amid all the chaos, it might unravel what fragile bond they had built. "Let us focus on today first. We can talk later," she replied softly, a hint of vulnerability lacing her words. But later felt ominously distant as the storm showed no signs of relenting. Nightfall gripped Maplewood in despair. Jack pushed through fatigue, knowing they were in this together. As the hours wore on, the clinic echoed with the cries of children and the rustling of feet. In the flickering lights, Jack noticed Sarah tending to a frightened little girl, clutching her teddy bear tightly. A wave of emotion washed over him as he witnessed the kindness in Sarah, a stark contrast to the facade he had once embodied. At that moment, realization hit him. Maybe this was a turning point for them both. This storm would either drown them in their past or wash away their differences forever. Suddenly, an urgent shout from outside shattered his thoughts. "The roof! It's starting to cave in." Jack's heart dropped as adrenaline surged through him. Would they be ready for what came next? Would this crisis finally unearth the truth about them both in the heart of the storm? With a clenched jaw, he turned to Sarah, determination burning in his eyes. "We need to act now. Come on." Together, they dashed toward the emergency, fighting against the tide of chaos closing in. As they fought for the future of their clinic, the future of their connection hung in the balance. Would they be able to confront their truths before the storm swept them away? The noise was deafening as Jack and Sarah pushed through the clinic's entrance. The faint flicker of overhead lights was competing with the roar of the rain, which pounded harder than ever. The urgent cries of the crowd melded with the sound of water pooling and gushing. They needed to act, and fast. "Grab that ladder!" Jack shouted, pointing toward the equipment stacked haphazardly in the corner. With no time to waste, Sarah sprang into action, her heart racing, adrenaline fueling every frantic motion. The girl she had comforted earlier was now back in her arms, wide-eyed and trembling. "It's okay, sweetie. We're going to be okay," she whispered, hoping to convey just enough calm for the little one to hold on to. As Jack secured the ladder against the wall, he instructed a couple of volunteers to start forming a human chain to pass supplies to the unaffected parts of the clinic. "Stay focused. We can't let anyone get hurt." His voice, filled with urgency and authority, cut through the tension. Sarah, glancing back, noticed Jack's determination, but she could see the worry etched on his brow. Just like everyone else, he was grappling with fear. Underneath that polished exterior lay a man desperately trying to keep it all together. With the ladder stabilized, Jack climbed up to examine the roof problems. The wood creaked, a sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. She caught her breath as Jack peered over the edge, searching for the compromised section. There's a gap. We need tarps up here to block the water. On it. Sarah was off before he finished his sentence, sprinting toward the storage area. But the supply room was in disarray. Worn-out boxes lay scattered, and she found herself submerged in the chaos. Panic ignited her thoughts. She searched for the tarps as she pushed aside broken crates and spilled supplies. No time to waste on self-doubt. Moments later, an unexpected crash reverberated through the building. The floor vibrated beneath her feet. The clinic, the lifeline of this community, was crumbling. She ran back to Jack, tarps clutched under her arm, her heart racing in her chest. "Jack!" she shouted as she approached the ladder. His eyes widened as he took in the scene below. "Get everyone to the back. Now." Sarah nodded, ushering the families toward the rear exit where the less flooded area was. Yet behind her, fear transformed into chaos as the roof buckled under the pressure. She pushed through the crowd, urging people to move faster, her voice steady even as her heart thundered in her ears. Outside, the storm still howled, but the clinic was alive with action. Jack descended and joined her, both of them resolute, merging their energies into a singular focus. "We have to reinforce that side before it collapses," he commanded, his eyes locking onto her. Together, Sarah offered, determination flaring within her as she stepped closer. In this moment, they had finally shed the weight of their past grievances, realizing they were now partners woven together by necessity. With their teamwork thriving, they hugged the tarps close, frantically securing them in place. Outside, the rain hammered mercilessly. As they worked, Jack's side brushed against hers, igniting something unusual in the pit of her stomach. Their unspoken connection took form around the chaos, sparking an odd warmth within her. But just then, another deep groan echoed from the roof. "It's not going to hold." Jack yelled over the racket, urgency clawing at his voice. "We have to get people out." Sarah's heart sank further, the weight of reality clashing with their limited time. "What about you?" she asked, looking at him with dread. "You can't stay alone up there." "I'll be fine. Go." He gestured toward the crowd, but instinctively, she grabbed his arm. "I won't leave you," she insisted, fear pooling in her chest as the roof creaked again. Time seemed to stand still in that instant. Would they risk it all for each other, or would the storm tear them apart? In that moment of uncertainty, a fresh series of cracks formed above them. Jack pulled her closer, his warmth contrasting the cold around them. "Sarah, you have to trust me. Go." As the clinic threatened to give way beneath them, Sarah wrestled with a decision that could change everything. Would she let go and flee, or would she stand firm beside someone who had become more than just a coworker? As the walls trembled in the storm's grip, a chilling realization embraced both of them. The stakes had never been higher. Would choosing to stay together be their salvation or their doom? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. There was no time to ponder the weight of her decision. Around them, the clinic was alive with panic and chaos as people desperately clamored for safety. She locked eyes with Jack, the fear in his gaze mirroring her own, and yet it anchored her. She couldn't abandon him, not when he stood so firm, ready to protect everyone. "Help me get everyone out first." Sarah shouted over the cacophony, her voice cutting through the tension. Jack hesitated for a split second, evaluating the urgency in her tone before giving a determined nod. Working together, they continued urging the families toward the rear exit. Each child clutched tightly by their parents was a reminder of everything that was at stake. Jack moved quickly, ensuring everyone understood the exit procedures, and Sarah found herself instinctively covering the little girl's ears to shield her from the noise. "Keep moving, everyone. Stay calm." Jack commanded, and with each word, he seemed to gain command over the chaos. His authority blossomed in the urgency of the moment. Suddenly, the roof let out a tortured screech, and a rush of air pushed against them as debris started tumbling down. Sarah barely had a moment to process before Jack knocked her to the ground, covering her body with his own. The sound of splintering wood resonated like thunder as a beam crashed down just inches away. A collective gasp rippled through the remaining crowd, a realization dawning that this wasn't just a storm anymore. Jack's heart raced, he could feel the panic rising in him too, but he forced it down, focusing on the situation. "Is everyone okay?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying the tension he felt. "I think so. Just a little shaken," one of the volunteers replied, her eyes wide with fear. Jack lifted his head, eyes darting around in search of Sarah. She was unharmed, sitting up beside him, her face pale but resolute. "What now?" she gasped, adrenaline surging through her veins. "We help them. We get everyone out," he said, instinct kicking in. Instinctively, they surged back into action, a seamless dance of determination forming between them. They formed a line, guiding families through the narrowing path to safety. Sarah blinked back tears as she watched a mother hold her child tightly, whispering promises of safety. The rain splattered against the outside world, its pulse a harsh reminder of the danger, but within the clinic, hope flickered. With each person they ushered out, Sarah felt something shift inside her. Maybe it was strength blossoming where fear had once ruled. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a figure. A man, seemingly in shock, standing frozen, clutching a small backpack. "You're not safe," Sarah shouted, rushing toward him. "We need to go." I can't leave it," he stammered, glancing nervously at his pack. Jack joined her, his face full of concern. "We can't waste time. Whatever's in there can't be more important than your life." But the man shook his head defiantly, and Sarah's resolve started to waver. A glimmer of understanding flashed between her and Jack. In the face of overwhelming danger, they each saw something deeper, what this moment could teach them about loss, loyalty, and love. "Look, just give me a second. I need to grab it," the man insisted, eyes darting between Sarah and Jack with desperation. "No." Jack's voice boomed. "We have to go. Now." Underneath the pressure of the moment, Sarah felt torn. How could she risk one life for another? And yet, could they turn their backs when hope was glimmering just a few feet away? "Jack," she whispered, realizing the choice was hers to make. "If we don't give him a chance, what if that chance costs us?" Jack replied, urgency wrapping around his words. As the roof above them groaned once more, old fears resurfaced, and for a brief moment, Sarah was lost in that question. Heart pounding against her ribs, she faced a choice that could make or break their fragile union of strength. In the dim light of that clinic, as flickers of hope and fear battled within them, she wondered how much they were willing to risk for each other and for this stranger. Would they fight together in every sense of the word, or would this torn moment rip them apart at the seams? Just then, a jarring crack echoed above. The time for decisions was running out. Sarah's stomach twisted as the crack reverberated through the clinic, the sound almost drowning out the frantic cries around them. The air felt thick with tension, a weight pressing down on her chest. She forced herself to look at the man with the backpack. Panic painted his features, but there was something resolute in his eyes, too a stubborn arc of hope. "Please," she pleaded, every ounce of her being urging him to understand the danger. "We can't do this alone. We need to get out." Jack stepped closer, his eyes flashing with determination. "We'll help you. Just tell us what's in there." The man swallowed hard, uncertainty trembling on his lip. "It's my daughter's things. Her toys, her blanket, she needs them." His voice cracked under the weight of his emotions. Behind them, the sound of pounding rain intensified, mixing with the ominous creaking of the structure above. Sarah felt a pulse of desperation. She thought of her own fears as a child, how comforting it was to have a familiar toy in her hands during storms. "Okay, but we need to do this fast," she urged. "Jack, can you help him?" Without a moment's hesitation, Jack turned to the man. "We'll grab what we can. Just point us to it." The resolve in his voice was electric, igniting a flicker of recognition in Sarah's spirit. They were all in this together. With shaky hands, the man gestured toward a corner, barely visible in the dying light filtering through the cracked windows. "It's behind that shelf, under other boxes." Jack darted forward, kneeling down to yank away debris as Sarah stepped beside him, trying not to think about the roof above them. Each muffled thud of wood crashing echoed her heartbeat. She could feel the seconds slipping away. "I'll hold this," she shouted as she placed a hand on a nearby partition, holding it steady and keeping it from toppling. In moments, Jack unearthed a colorful backpack, slightly tattered but still intact. He passed it to the man, who took it as if it were a lifeline. "Now let us go, please," Sarah urged, heart pounding with urgency. But as the man took a step back, relief washing over his face, a cascading roar drowned the storm outside. The clinic shook violently as more debris began to fall. "Get down!" Jack bellowed, pulling Sarah down to the ground as scattered wood rained down around them. The world narrowed to this singular moment, urgency curling in Sarah's throat. A beam narrowly missed them, smashing into the ground where they had just been standing. The overwhelming sound was deafening, and fear gripped Sarah like a vice. "You okay?" Jack's voice was strained but filled with concern as he checked her for injuries. I'm fine. Just scared," she admitted, breathless. She locked eyes with him, a moment of understanding passing between them. They were fighting for something deeper now, a bond formed in desperation. Just then, a familiar voice pierced through the chaos. "Sarah." "Jack." It was one of the clinic volunteers, frantic but resolute. "We need to move. There's another exit in the back hallway, but it's blocked." The man's face blanched as he took in the situation. "We can't just leave." "Yes, we can," Jack shouted. "We have to trust each other, now." A flicker of doubt crossed the man's face, but then the worry for his daughter overtook his fear. He nodded, determination etched across his brow. As they scrambled toward the indicated path, Sarah felt the air shift once more. Would they make it? In the midst of fear, she felt a burgeoning sense of strength within each of them, starting to transform the despair into hope. They were risking everything, but together. When they reached the hallway, a new sound drew their attention. A rumbling, though different this time. Something was coming, and it didn't sound like it was from the storm. "What now?" Jack whispered, tense and alert, as they stood frozen in the entryway. The rumbling grew louder, echoing off the clinic's walls. It sounded heavy, purposeful. Sarah's heart raced, and she exchanged worried glances with Jack and the man. They collectively held their breath, the air thick with uncertainty. "Is it more debris?" the man whispered, panic biting at his words. "No, it feels different," Jack replied, his brow furrowed as he focused on the noise. "I don't think it's the building." That's when they heard a low growl that vibrated through the floor, a sound so unsettling that it made Sarah's skin crawl. She turned her head slightly toward the source. "Stay close," she murmured, grabbing the man's arm as if just touching him could somehow fortify their resolve. Suddenly, the clinic door burst open, swaying on its hinges. A figure framed in the doorway, backlit by the storm's fury, a silhouette of chaos. The dim light revealed the outlines of a large truck or perhaps something worse prowling just outside. "What is happening?" the man stammered. Everything seemed to shift. Rain lashed in, a misty curtain obscuring their view, and they could see shadows moving. Wandering eyes leered through the haze, and two more figures joined, staggering forward as the shadows lengthened. "Jack, what do we do?" Sarah breathed, her voice barely a whisper. She was terrified but also felt an odd calmness, the kind you get before you jump off a high dive. "We find another way out," he said confidently. "There has to be a back door or window. Or we can, I don't know, barricade ourselves," the man suggested, desperation creeping into his tone. The hope in his eyes was flickering, and Sarah desperately wanted to ignite it again. "Let us move," Jack commanded, breaking the momentary paralysis gripping them. They dashed down the narrow hallway, the rumbling growing fainter behind them. Adrenaline surged as they stumbled through the dim light, their feet pounding against the cold floor. But the overwhelming sound of the storm mixed with the ominous rumbling made it hard to differentiate their fear from the chaos outside. "Right here," Sarah shouted, suddenly halting at a door at the end of the hallway. She yanked it open, but it was dark inside, and she hesitated, scanning the uncertainty. "Do we really trust this?" the man questioned, still clutching the backpack possessively. "We don't have a choice," Jack fired back, his eyes determined. As they stepped into the dark, Sarah felt a chill against her skin. The room was cramped and littered with forgotten crates, the air stale, yet it was a chance, a possible escape route. The rumbling returned, louder now, pounding like a distant drum. They huddled together, hearts thudding in unison, trying to catch their breath. What if it's too late? What if the man's words trembled with doubt? "Then we face it together," Jack declared, his voice cutting through the darkness. "No matter what happens next, we don't leave anyone behind." The man nodded, his grip on the backpack tightening, and Sarah felt the smallest spark of hope. Suddenly, the door creaked under a weight from outside, and Sarah's heart plummeted. "Run!" she shouted, shoving past Jack and the man. But as they raced deeper into the looming shadows, a dreadful realization struck Sarah. What awaited them outside might be worse than anything they had faced inside the crumbling clinic. Are we really prepared for whatever is out there? She thought, her gut twisting with worry. Before she could voice her fears, a blinding light pierced the darkness, illuminating their path ahead. It felt almost like a beacon, a call to action. Just then, she caught a fleeting glimpse of movement outside the door. A face. "Sarah," Jack whispered, a familiar voice, barely audible above the chaos. What was happening now? Who was that, and how did they know their names? Fear and curiosity intertwined, driving them forward into the unknown. The danger hadn't ebbed, it had simply transformed. As they crept closer to the threshold, Sarah's heart palpitated. Would they step into safety, or had they unwittingly walked into a worse nightmare? She took a deep breath, the future uncertain yet beckoning. "Let us go," she said, voice quivering but resolute. "Would you follow?" The brightness spilled like liquid gold into the cramped, dusty room, chasing away the shadows that crept in the corners. As they stepped toward the doorway, Sarah squinted, trying to make sense of the figure standing beyond the light. "Is that?" Jack hesitated, his voice thick with disbelief. There was an air of familiarity, but it was shrouded in the chaos surrounding them. "Sarah!" "Jack!" The voice called out again, more clearly this time. It was familiar, but also strained, almost as if it was a ghost from their past. "Tom!" Sarah recognized him instantly, her heart leaping with a mix of relief and confusion. Tom, their old friend from college, a vibrant soul they thought lost in the mess of the world outside. "What are you doing here?" she barely managed to ask as they finally crossed the threshold, leaving the darkness behind. "It's not safe. We need to move," Tom shouted, urgency lining his face as he grabbed both of their arms, pulling them into the storm. The wind howled around them, a feral beast hungry for chaos. "Where's the other guy?" Tom glanced around, seeking the third member of their party. "He's right here," Jack managed to say, pointing toward the man who still clutched the backpack like a lifeline. "We don't have time for explanations. Just trust me." Tom's eyes bore into them, filled with an intensity that cut through the storm's roar. Without waiting for a response, He began to lead the way down a narrow path, the flickering streetlights barely managing to pierce the sheets of rain. Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest. Who had Tom become? The boy they knew was adventurous, vibrant, the man before her now felt grizzled, tired. Where do we go? She queried, stumbling slightly on the uneven ground. There's an old garage nearby if it's still standing. We can hold up there until the storm passes. Tom replied, glancing back to check if they were behind him. But what's out there? The man asked, his voice wavering. If it's not safe here we need to know. Tom turned back, his face serious. I'll explain everything later, I promise. Just move. As they pressed on, the rumbling sound returned, more voracious than before, crackling with energy like a brewing storm about to unleash its fury. They dashed down the path, heartbeats thundering louder than the storm. Each flash of lightning illuminated frightening glimpses of what was prowling in the shadows around them, unnatural shapes that shifted and twisted, making Sarah's skin prick with fear. And then, with a violent jolt, the ground shook underfoot. A sound, almost a roar, sent a chill down her spine, causing her to glance back. Figures, more than she could count, emerged from the murk, black silhouettes rushing toward them with relentless hunger. The shadows were alive, weaving purposefully toward the light like moths drawn to a flame. Faster! Jack yelled, gripping her wrist as he quickened his pace. Fear ignited in Sarah's veins but also grew into determination as they surged forward. The garage loomed ahead, a battered relic of the past, searching for shelter in the storm. Tom sprinted toward it, hitting the door with force. Come on! He urged, his breath ragged. Just as they reached the threshold, the shadows reacted, swirling closer, and panic surged again. They surged through the entrance, slamming the door behind them, their hearts racing in their chests like a wild drum. Huddled together in the dim light of the garage, drenched and panting, Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie, the shared fear, the joint purpose. But beneath it all lingered questions: was Tom still the friend they knew? What truly lay in wait outside in the storm? I can explain, but Tom started, glancing toward the heavy door. First, we need to survive. Before she could respond, the growl returned, louder and more primal. It echoed through the garage, vibrating in her bones. All at once, the weight of their circumstances settled over her like a heavy blanket, thick with dread. What were they truly up against, and could they really trust Tom's judgment after everything? As the growls intensified, resonating through the looming darkness, Sarah felt one final thought reverberate within her: what if the danger was closer than even they imagined? The echoes of the growl hung in the air, heavy and menacing. Shadows danced on the far walls of the garage as the wind howled outside, whipping against the tin roof as if it wanted to tear them apart. Sarah's heart raced. She looked at Tom, desperately seeking comfort in his familiar face, but all she found was tension and worry. What's out there? Jack asked again, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would summon whatever lurked beyond the door. Tom took a deep breath, his brow furrowed. I wish I could explain it all now, but the truth is it's something we don't understand yet. We just need to stay quiet and stay together. His voice held a mix of authority and fear, more intense than Sarah had ever seen him. The growling persisted, a low rumble that seeped through the walls and sent chills up her spine. Time hung thick in the air, and Sarah felt an invisible current pull at her, urging her to listen closely to the silence that blanketed them between the roars. If it wants in, Jack mumbled, what are we supposed to do? Without giving it much thought, Sarah moved closer to Tom, her hands trembling at her sides. You always had answers, Tom. What happened to you? Why are you talking like this? I saw things, got caught up in it all. Lost myself. Tom's voice cracked slightly, the vulnerability beneath his bravado apparent. I thought it was just rumors, something they cooked up to feed the fear. But it's worse than anything we could have imagined. And it's out there, hungry. The door rattled slightly, a shiver jolting through Sarah at the sound. You said we need to survive. What do we do? Stay away from the doors and windows. We'll figure something out. Tom's eyes darted around the garage, searching for anything useful. There are tools here, maybe even weapons. We need to barricade this place until help arrives. Help. The word felt distant and hollow, like a star long extinguished. She could see Jack moving away, rifling through an old toolbox, his face tense, shadows flickering across his features. Got something, he hollered, holding up a rusted wrench. The fleeting glimmer of metal felt like a meager lifeline. Let South make this place secure, Tom encouraged, starting to push against a pile of old crates to block the door. The growling intensified, fueling fears that slashed through the tension in the air. Sarah joined Jack in searching for anything solid that would be useful. The place was a graveyard of old tools and broken machinery, remnants of lives once there. She shivered, not just from the cold, but from the feeling that the shadows were judging them, looming closer every passing second. As they barricaded the door, Tom stole glances outside through a dirty window. Each time, a shadow danced just out of reach, and every glance sent a spike of adrenaline through Sarah's system. Tom, tell us more, she urged, you can't just leave us in the dark. What's really out there? He hesitated, his eyes darting to the door, then back to her, panic mingling with a sense of conviction. I promise I will, but right now we need to focus. Suddenly, the ground shook. The walls trembled, dust raining down. The roar was no longer just a sound, it felt like it was resonating through their very bones. Hold on. Tom shouted, gripping the edge of the table as if it could anchor them to safety. Sarah's hands shook as she felt the vibrations echo in her heart. What is happening? As the world outside transformed into chaos, a realization crept into Sarah's mind. Whatever they had left behind wasn't just shadows, but entities of a different nature, hungry, angry, and now, relentless. Tom's voice suddenly reached her, firm and deliberate. We have to make it to the back door. If they get in, we won't survive, but I know a way out, just trust me. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. Trust was a shaky foundation, she could see that now. But as the growls merged into a chorus, something inside her shifted. Could she really follow him into the unknown, leaving the comfort of familiar bonds behind? In that moment of indecision, the floor shook again, louder, and she couldn't ignore the lurking question: what awaited them on the other side if they must escape from here? Can you hear that? Jack shouted, panic etched across his features as he pointed toward the door. The growl shifted into a voice, a chilling whisper that made Sarah's skin crawl. Let us in, it hissed, a plea that felt fraught with dark promise. What if trusting Tom meant damning them all? The growl became a cacophony, a menacing chant that reverberated inside the tiny garage. Let us in lingered in the air, words clawing at Sarah's mind, threatening to consume her thoughts. She glanced at Jack, whose eyes were wide with fear, and then back at Tom. This man, their friend, had returned not just as a survivor, but as a harbinger of something sinister. Tom, what does that mean? Sarah's voice trembled, every ounce of her being urging her to run. What do we do now? Stay calm. Focus. Tom shouted, pulling out tools and jagged metal pieces, tossing them onto the scuffed floor. We barricade the door, but we need to think smart. We can't let whatever's out there catch us unaware. But what is out there? Jack shot back, his frustration bubbling over. You came back here claiming there's something dangerous on the loose. Are we supposed to believe you just because you're a familiar face? The shadows danced along the walls, mocking their every word, and Sarah felt a swell of frustration and fear rise in her chest. We need to put our differences aside. She cried. This isn't about whether we trust him or not. It's about surviving. In that moment, some invisible cord tied them together, forged through fear and desperation. Fighting against the impending darkness wasn't an option, survival hinged on their ability to work as one. As they piled crates and scrap metal against the door, the growling morphed into low, throaty laughter, sending shivers through Sarah. Time felt distorted, each second stretching painfully long. The world outside was brutal and unknown, but within those walls, they were united in purpose. "Let us move to the back," Tom urged, pressing his finger to his lips. "We'll take the service entrance. It's our best shot." Their feet stumbled as they maneuvered through the clutter, but adrenaline coursed through their veins, propelling them into action. The eerie whispers followed them, an omnipresent cloud left lingering in the air. Rushing toward the dimly lit hallway that led to the exit, Sarah could feel the urgency growing. Jack's breath was quickening, and even Tom seemed more focused than ever, driving them forward. The door loomed ahead, seemingly towering over them, an exit to uncertainty. "Remember," Tom said, glancing back at Jack and Sarah, "stick close. Don't separate, no matter what happens out there. It's about teamwork." "I get it, but for all we know, whatever is out there might be waiting," Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We can't afford to hesitate." Her heart pounded against her ribcage as she gripped the door handle, glancing back momentarily to see the shadows writhing like a hungry monster waiting to strike. With one hard yank, she swung the door wide open, exposing the fury of the storm beyond. Raindrops pelted her skin like icy needles, nearly blinding her. "Let us go," she yelled, her voice swallowed by the storm. They dashed out into the mayhem, adrenaline surging anew. The wind roared, pushing them fiercely as they stumbled forward. An unmistakable sense of urgency gripped them. They moved along the side of the building, huddled together, hearts pounding. "Over there!" Tom shouted, pointing toward an old shed nestled against the building's back. Sarah didn't hesitate. She sprinted ahead, following Tom's lead. Behind them, she could hear the unmistakable growls ramping up, an indication that whatever loomed in the storm wasn't far behind. "Almost there!" Jack shouted, his voice strained with exertion. When they finally burst into the shed, they slammed the door closed, hearts racing. It was filled with rusted tools and old tarps, piled high and forgotten, but it felt like a sanctuary in that moment. Light seeped through the cracks, but it was the absence of growls that engulfed them in a suffocating silence. "Now what?" Jack asked, chest heaving with effort. "We hold here for now," Tom replied. "We need to gather our thoughts and see what we're dealing with. Save our energy." The storm raged outside, howling warnings they couldn't comprehend, but within the shed, the tension shifted. Sarah felt the weight of unspoken words wrapping around them like a chain. "Tom, you owe us an explanation," she pressed, feeling the spark of trust flicker amidst their peril. He nodded, resignation washing over him. "I thought it was over. I thought I could outrun them. But they're hunting something darker than we imagined. It came for me, for all of us." His words were laced with an unsettling gravity. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Jack's brow furrowed as he crossed his arms, the frustration spilling over. "I didn't fully understand it myself," Tom replied, his voice softer now. "I thought I could save us. But we have to be smarter, work together. That's the only way to get through this." In the stillness of that cramped shed, Sarah felt them begin to emerge from fear. She saw more than just a few terrified friends, she saw allies, bonded not just by memories, but by the fight for their lives. "Together," Sarah echoed, her voice steady and strong. "We fight this. We don't let it win." Through flashes of lightning, her heart ignited with purpose. The storm outside may threaten to consume them, but in this forgotten corner, beneath the roar of havoc, they were not just survivors. They were a force willing to fight back. As Jack and Tom silently shared a look of understanding, Sarah held on to the hope that they could stand against whatever fate had woven ahead. Without fear, without doubt, they were ready. What came next would define who they were, and they would face it together. "Let us do this," they all declared in unison, steeling themselves against the looming storm. Together, they would reclaim their strength and step into a new dawn filled with hope and resilience. Now, they were ready to face whatever lay beyond the shadows. Don't wait not even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support.